And welcome to season 11, episode 12 of the Data Governance podcast. And I can't believe we've come to the end of yet another podcast. And this really is a great episode to end the season on, though. I am so excited that I'm going to get to talk to my friend Rob Hawker, who is an interesting person because he's really experienced in both data governance and data analytics. And I thought it was really great to have him on to share how perhaps these two disciplines cross over and how they can work well together to get even better benefits for your organisation. So let's dive in and hear what Rob has to say. So welcome to the podcast, Rob. It's lovely to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me, Nicola. It's really great to do it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So I'm sure you know, most people who come on my podcast, I do like to ask the question because I'm nosy or perhaps curious, as we were discussing previous, is a better thing. It's like, how long have you actually been working in data and how did you actually get into it?
Okay, thank you, Nicola. Yeah, I think definitely curious. We'll go with curious instead of nosy. Yeah, I started in data in 2007. So I was working for Vodafone at the time. I started my career out of university in 2001 as an accountant. So I joined PwC and qualified as an accountant, and I acted as an auditor for a while, going to different companies, checking their accounts, even doing stock takes and things like that in shops and warehouses and all those kinds of things. And then moved to Vodafone, and then the kind of big thing going on at Vodafone in 2007 was a global implementation of SAP. So putting in one single instance of SAP, and there was a huge data component to that, migrating data from old ERP systems into that one single SAP platform. And as an accountant, they asked me to look after financial data, and it was suddenly then getting into the world of data governance, defining data, coming up with who the data owners and stewards were. And I'd never heard of that concept before, really. So it was a tricky beginning in a very fast paced project, but with consultants around who could kind of help me to learn my trade, if you like. I stayed in that team for 7 years, and I started off defining finance data. Then I got more into the technical data management side of things. So I was responsible for Vodafone's master data management tool for a period of time, implementing supplier data and product data and things like that into that tool. And then I started to look after data quality as well. I got into that in quite an interesting way, actually. So my boss at the time was going to bring in a team of consultants in a low cost location and just get them to check all of our supplier data and fix it. And I remember saying to him at the time, how can we expect a third party to come in for a limited period of time and get our data looking as it should be? Because they don't know anything about the business. They don't understand what we actually require from our data. I mean, Vodafone, for example, has vendors just like any other company where they're buying things from the supplier and it gets delivered somewhere. But they also have things like, telecommunications equipment on the roof of a building, and you're paying rental to that supplier. And that's a very different model, and you need very different data for it, right? So to bring in a third party just to clean up our data just seemed wrong to me. So I managed to work with him to get a data quality tool in place and a data quality program in place. And that's when I got into data quality. And I kind of then led that team for a period. I was in the team for sort of 7 years in total. And then I carried on that data management, data governance route for a period of time, working for other organizations. I worked for a banking organization. And then I became head of data and analytics for a flu vaccine company for nearly 5 years. And obviously I got brought in for my data and my data management, data governance expertise. But the biggest problem that we had at the time there was a complete lack of reporting and analytics. So I necessarily had to get into reporting and analytics. And we chose Power BI for that organization because it just seemed like the right fit. And I got trained in it so that I could kind of really know what I was talking about. And it was a bit of an eye-opening day for me because I just found that I loved working with Power BI. And I was dabbling in it all the time instead of doing my proper job. And in the end, I took the decision to kind of head down that route at the end of my 5 year period. I actually then moved into a an organization looking after visualization as a whole and very much focused on Power BI with a team and all the rest of it. So completely changed that career path. And then I got made redundant after that because that company moved a lot of their work over to the US. And I was at that time actually I just had an approach from PAC to the publisher to see if I would like to write a book. And having then been made redundant, I thought, okay, this is a great time to do something like that. I don't want to be at home job seeking with nothing to do. I would like to have something to keep me busy. And I really wanted to kind of bookend the first half of my career because I knew I wanted to carry on with the analytics stuff. So it was a really good time to kind of bookend that half of my career. I didn't want to waste all that knowledge from all the things that I'd learned and all the mistakes that I'd made. And I wanted to kind of make that useful for people. So that's then when I wrote a book called Practical Data Quality. And then just after I agreed to do that, I walked straight into a role to to work on Power BI and other things. So had to then write the book in the time that I could find. And actually, the organisation I was working for were kind enough to give me some days where I could do that, which was fantastic. So that kind of brings me up to date. I'm consulting independently at the moment for two different organisations on Power BI and Microsoft Fabric, and it's a real passion, and I love every day. It's really good.
Excellent. So, yeah, I love understanding. Everybody comes at data from slightly different directions, and I always love learning how people have got there. Before we move on, because I do want to talk to you about the analytics and the how that and the data governance go together. But I'd love you to tell us a little bit more about the book. So I was incredibly flattered when you asked me to write the foreword. So I have actually read it, but I'd love to hear from your words. Perhaps what is the main premise? Who's it aimed at? What do people learn from reading the book?
Cool. Thanks, Nicola, and thanks very much for doing the foreword. We were having a think about who would be best placed to do it, and for me, you'd always been one of the key data governance voices. So it was really wonderful to have you write it. When you told me you were going to do it, there were the fist pumps and everything. Sorry, fist pumps and everything. I got so excited. So thank you so much for doing it. Yeah, I mean the book, the premise of the book is you know, you've been told anecdotally in your organization that there's a problem with data quality. I hear it so much. Every client I go to, they say, "Oh, data quality is terrible," and it's really, really hard to kind of pin down what that really means. And so, what the book is about is taking that kind of anecdotal view and turning it into something really precise, where you're able to measure precisely what is wrong with your data. Out of all of those things that are wrong with your data, what's the most important thing? And where should you start? How do you then report on the quality of that data and trend it over time and see if you're improving it or not? How do you actually go about fixing it? And then how do you sustain that, once it has been fixed and keep the data of a good level of quality? And it focuses a lot on actually what is bad data quality at the beginning, because you can certainly say your data is bad, but for me, it's really only bad if it stops you doing the things you need to do as a business. So I look at things like what are the processes that you're trying to run, what are the analytics and reporting, what are the insights you're trying to get, what compliance do you need to compliance buttons do you need to hit, and if you're trying to differentiate yourself by even offering like a data product, what data do you need to make that product work? If the data doesn't impact any one of those things, then to me, it's even if it is not correct, it doesn't necessarily matter, and therefore it's not necessarily what I would call bad data. So yeah, that's a quick view of the
That's
book.
great. And if anybody listening is interested, Rob's very kindly arranged with his publisher to do a discount on his book. So hang around right to the very end, and I will share with you where you can go and use the discount to get Rob's book, which I would highly recommend. So
Thank you.
getting back onto topic, but I couldn't have you on the podcast and not talk about your book. is
Thank you.
that I love the fact that when I talk to you, you understand data governance, so you understand what directions I'm coming at, and I really do feel like you're my go-to person to ask questions about Power BI and analytics. So, I'd love to hear a bit more about, the work you do today in analytics, and how do you think that perhaps your background in data governance influences how you do your work now?
Yeah, so let me tell you about some of the work I'm doing at the moment. So, in the last month, for example, I've been working for one client where I've been actually developing a suite of reports for them. So they didn't have any reporting really at all, and I'm building Power BI reports that allow them to improve the way they're operating. And so I've got my hands dirty and busy with that. But the other work that I'm doing, I'm spending 3 days a week in a role where I'm not developing, heavily involved with Power BI and Microsoft Fabric, but my job is more governance again. So it really does pull on my data governance background because my role there is to make sure that all the reports that are being built and shared within this organization are, at the right level of quality. They're owned. They've got definitions behind them. They've got documentation behind them, and make sure that there are other more technical aspects to it as well. So making sure that the models within Power BI are using best practices so they perform well. So when you open a report, it doesn't cause a big spike in your Power BI capacity that you pay for, and to make sure they're like scalable across hundreds or thousands of users. So there's a more technical aspect to the role, and there's, I do a lot of training of people to teach them, exactly how to build things in Power BI. So there's a lot that's different to the data governance role, but it struck me as quite interesting when I was writing an approach for my client for how we would endorse our Power BI reporting. By endorse, we mean give people, the end users a badge, if you like, to understand if it's a fully certified product that they can really rely on, or if it's something that is still kind of in construction prototype. And, I defined for the certified reports what steps they would need to go through to make sure that they were up to scratch. And it was just very similar to a lot of the things that you might consider important in the data governance world as well. So, and the other thing is that working and looking at building your own Power BI reports, looking at other people's Power BI reports, it's quite interesting to find all of the data quality issues that people are working around. I'm doing it myself now. I build a report, the data doesn't look right, and I have to find a way of getting that data maybe from somewhere else. I find myself bringing in a spreadsheet and using the spreadsheet to patch the data that's missing in the proper data source. But the difference with me is, having come from the other side of the fence, I will find a data quality person and report that problem to them and help them understand that it needs solving in the source system, and then I'll take out the workaround once they solve it. Whereas actually, those of you that work in data governance and data quality roles, if you probably will find, if you talk in depth to your analytics teams, that they're doing an awful lot of working around data quality problems that they don't even tell you about. Maybe they don't even know you're there. And if you were to work more closely together, you'll probably find really good benefits for the organization if you can clean up those issues.
I think that is such a true statement, and I think anecdotally over the years, a lot of analytics teams have told me they waste about 50% of their time in finding and then fixing data to be able to
Yeah.
run the right reports. And I tend to say that statistic quite a lot. And I was running a workshop with a client last year, and I said that as part of the workshop, and they'd got their head of the data science team was on the call, and in the introductions it'd been made very clear he was very senior and very highly well regarded in this organization. And as I did my little anecdote, he just went, I have just got to stop you right there. And I'm thinking, oh God, this is the first workshop when I've offended somebody really serious. And he went, you are being way, way too optimistic there. And I went, sorry, did he just say optimistic?
Oh my goodness.
And he said, my team are wasting 90% of their time messing around trying to find the data, trying to fix it. He said, and it's crazy. We've got these great skills. We're paying a lot for these skills and we're just not using them. So I think you've got this lovely fusion of the two, and you're probably in a really good position to be
Yeah.
able to explain perhaps in terms that get analytics teams on board.
Oh, thanks. I
Why we need
appreciate
to do
that.
data
Yeah.
governance, because I think it's really, really important. So,
No, definitely. I just wonder sometimes how open those communication channels are between those two groups, right? Are
mm,
the analytics teams, if they really are honest with themselves, do they in a really structured way report that every data quality issue that they work around to someone, or does the developer under pressure do the work, produce the workaround, publish the report, move on to the next report, and never gets the chance to tell anyone, right? I think that
yes.
latter is probably hopefully people listening to this are thinking, yeah, that might be right, and I need to do something about that.
No, I think that's a really fair point. So I get asked an awful lot about AI and data governance, and I've done videos on that if anybody wants to go and see them. But I'm wondering about perhaps the impact more on the analytics side of things, because that's obviously not something I have the expertise and experience of. So how do you see AI impacting analytics? Is it helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the roadmap for Power BI and Fabric and how they've been developing those products over the last few years at Microsoft, it is very much about embedding AI. They've got close partnership with OpenAI, and they've got their Copilot product that they've brought into everything that we use on the Microsoft side. And Power BI is no different. Fabric's no different. You've got co-pilots in every experience within Power BI and Fabric these days. So it's already at the point where you can type into a prompt what you want your report to look like, and Fabric will design that report for you or produce multiple pages of the report, and it will look like a human developer has built the report. It looks genuinely really impressive. And I think where then the kind of data governance conversation comes back in again and the analytics governance conversation is that those really only produce the highest level of quality when your semantic model, which is that's the Power BI item that brings all the data together and creates relationships between things. So you might have customer relates to sale and supplier relates to purchase and all of those kinds of things in your Power BI model. And sometimes you've got your own internal business language in there that the AI won't necessarily fully understand. But within the Power BI semantic model, you can define all the terms. So you can define at table level, you can define at field level, you can explain synonyms for different business terms and things like that. So many of the things that probably already exist in the data governance world can be added into the Power BI semantic model. And then if the AI has access to all that information, then it can create a much better first pass at the report. If you have a completely empty semantic model that's just got the technical stuff in it, like the calculations and the relationships and things like that, and you ask AI to work on that, and then you give it another one that's been fully documented in the way I've just described, you will get a night and day difference in terms of the output that's produced. And usually, what you'll find with producing reports using AI is that, maybe 20% of all the visualizations it produces are really genuinely interesting. And there'll be maybe 10% in there that you would never have thought of to even look at yourself. So it doesn't build the finished product. It's not going to replace me, fortunately, just yet. But it does give me the opportunity to spot some things that I might not have thought to even look at, some relationships between changes in data that perhaps I wouldn't even have thought to look at. And it does give me the chance to get ahead with my report build. I get a starter for 10, basically. That's where I think it is at the moment. But that's just the Power BI side of things. If you look at the broader Microsoft Fabric platform, which is the whole end-to-end data engineering stack, the whole world has kind of opened up there because in there you can code in multiple different languages, and so you can use Python or R or SQL to transform data to produce query results and things like that. And you've got Copilot in there as well, so you can just again tell it in business language what you're trying to do, and then you've got access to all the coding languages through Copilot, and it's got the context of where your data's come from, and all the lineage is all kind of built in and understood by the Copilot. And then even just little things like if you're analyzing text data, so let's say you've got complaints data and you've got a million records, all with text explaining, then you can actually run in your Fabric notebooks. You could actually say, I want you to summarize the key themes that you're seeing across all of the million records, and the frequency that each of those key themes appears in. So it's really built into every experience in Fabric. But for me personally, it's given me the chance to do a broader range of work than I might previously have done. I'm always very honest with clients about what my strengths are and what my weaknesses are. I would never go in and claim to be a fantastic SQL or Python developer, for example. But what I can do now is say I'm willing to take on that piece of work because I'm really strong on 80% of it. And the other 20% now I can partner with AI to produce the outcome that you're looking for, as long as you've got somebody who can, validate the code in the end. So for me personally, it's opened up and given me more confidence to take on things that I might not have taken on before.
I think it sounds like it's very powerful that perhaps it'll make perhaps that analytics more accessible to business users. So
Yeah.
personally, I don't know if I've ever told you the story about, but I learned SQL years and years ago. Found the course really easy, flew through it, um, did all the tests and exams, got whatever I needed to get. Tried to do it in the real world on the data warehouse, and I accidentally did a Cartesian join, joined
Okay.
every table to every table. For anybody who's listening, doesn't know that. It uses all the processing power. The DBA, one of the DBAs rang me out and was not very polite. It's probably the easiest way to describe it. At that point, I decided my career was not in coding. And but it's frustrating because it means that I can see the data, I understand what it is, but I can't actually query it. But actually that ability to tell it in business language, you know,
Yeah.
tell me this, and the fact that it could then write the code for me
Yeah.
without me needing to be able to write SQL or even learn another language. Given my experience with SQL, I don't really think I should learn another coding language. But it's that kind of, and I think that's going to make things a lot more accessible
Yeah.
to people, because I think there's real value in people being able to interrogate data. But I think you always need the backup from people who analytics is their thing.
No, completely agree. And I think, when you are using code that's come from something like Copilot, you need to have a level of confidence about it. I never run code I don't understand. I will always make sure that that I understand it, and if I don't understand, I'll chunk it. I'll break it down further, and I'll say just give me the code that does this to start with, and then I'll make sure I understand that, and then I'll say now add this part for me, and I just make sure I have a good understanding of it. And so but I am a little worried about people doing, running ahead without doing that, because as you say, it could then lead to unwanted consequences sometimes. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So I'm wondering, and I'm just thinking out loud and seeing what you think. But so back years ago when there were just like basic data profiling tools available and they were only really used by the analytics teams, I used to say to, I'd met you for the first time and I go, Rob, I need you to write some data quality rules on your data that you've just agreed to be a data owner for. And you go, well, I don't know where to start. And I go, it's all right, I'll go and find my friends in the analytics team and I'll get them to run some profiling results. But except the analytics teams are really busy and it might take
yeah,
months. And then they do it and I say, look, this is what it says. These are the outliers. And go, no, that's not an outlier because of this. And I'll say, and then I'd have to wait weeks or months again for them to tweak the rules and run it all again. Does it feels like maybe the way you're describing it, that may be something that a data governance team could then use perhaps that kind of tool for,
yeah.
is to almost use the AI to do some basic profiling that they can handle themselves. And when you think you're getting to what the business requirements are and the business rule are, you can
Yeah,
hand it over to your experts to actually make sure it's set up correctly.
absolutely. And that goes for not just that aspect, but every aspect of the data governance, data management world. I think you can definitely do that, and that happens in the analytics world today. You've got what we call citizen developers, so people that have got a day job that's nothing to do with analytics, but they get excited about data and they want to play with something like Power BI. You generally don't stop those people. You'll let them go ahead and build something that they think is going to be interesting and exciting. And now with Copilot, they can do even more. And then you'll ask them to hand that over to the team that really should be developing it in the organization. and make sure that, and then that team might redevelop it a little bit, but at least it's like the best business requirement they've ever received because
You've
it's,
already done that
yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that happens a lot, and I think you're right. I mean, you could definitely pass things. You could definitely use Copilot to generate your data quality rules in any coding language that you want, and I think I even talked about that in the last chapter of the book. Now I think about it, but one other thing that's out there that I found amazing recently, and I have a YouTube video on this, which maybe we can put as a link somewhere,
Definitely.
where if you have something like Microsoft Fabric, and you can get your free trial for Fabric for 60 days. So even if you just want to try this out, nobody needs to spend money trying this out necessarily. There's an organization out there called YData that has a Python library for profiling. So all you need to do is get your table of data. So let's say you're connecting to a SQL database and you want to check the data in there. You just connect to your SQL database, bring the table into Fabric, and then you can run this free Y data profiling tool over it, and it produces the most amazing data profile, even with kind of visual elements to it, where you can see like correlations between fields. And in the video that we'll link, I was looking at road traffic accident data, and just trying it out. And I noticed that there was a strong correlation between the location of the accident and left-hand drive vehicles. And what had happened was where you've got ferry ports and things like that, you've got people coming into the UK and they're used to driving on the right and they're suddenly driving on the left. Then accidents happen close to the port before they've had the chance to get used to anything. And that was visible from the profile from YData. And I don't think that would have been visible in profiling that I was doing in 2012 or whatever. I think that's moved on a lot. And that was incredibly valuable and completely free.
Wow, that sounds very exciting, and we'll definitely share that link for anybody who's interested. So we are rapidly running out of time, sadly, because
I talk
you and
too
I
much.
can talk. Yeah, we can talk for hours. Will, but I have to think. I do try and keep these manageable,
Yeah. We
digestible
we should we
for my
should share
listeners.
with anyone listening that we've been talking for nearly 40 minutes before we even
This
started.
is true, yeah. I'm sure we'll carry on afterwards as well.
Yeah.
But for my listeners, I always like my podcast guests to leave them some practical advice, because that's kind of what my podcast is trying to give people real advice. I think it's been really clear from what you've been sharing with us that perhaps whether you are an analytics professional or whether you're a data governance professional, the two teams really need to work together. They can work together really well and add so much more value by working in alignment. So I wondered if you'd got advice for perhaps both sides of the data fence. What would
Yeah.
you give them their advice on how can they make the most of working with their opposite numbers and the other teams?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's almost a repeat of some of the things I've said already, if I'm honest. But it's if you're in the data governance world, I guarantee your colleagues in analytics will have a bunch of workarounds that they're doing at the moment, where they're combining golden source data with spreadsheet data to fill in holes, and they're not telling you about it. So go and knock on their door and find out what it is that they are doing and how you might be able to unpick that over time, once you've corrected the data. And also then think about what benefits fixing that data will have beyond just the analytics teams, right? It's probably going to help you with your processes and your compliance and all the other things as well. So definitely would recommend that conversation, not just with your formal analytics teams, but also for those kind of citizen analytics developers out there as well, who maybe are out there doing a day job, but they dabble in analytics. They'll have some more stories for you as well, which could lead to important data quality improvements. And then I think if I go and give that advice in return to the analytics teams, I would say, especially with AI coming your way and making your lives hopefully easier, there's a whole plethora of documentation and support that your data governance teams will hopefully have built up over time. So definitions, a proper bank of synonyms probably out there somewhere talking about the differences. But we don't call it revenue here; we call it something else. And all of that kind of information is out there, ready to be added into your models that you're using, so that AI can come along and hopefully deliver better outputs, better results. So yeah, I think the two teams working together closely is really what will leave a lasting impact.
Excellent. This has been, I knew it was going to be great talking to you, Rob.
Oh,
It's been
thanks.
really useful. And I'm sure it's going to be one of those ones that perhaps the listeners need to go back and listen to again and keep pausing to write things down, because you've been generous and you shared so much great advice, as I kind of suspected you would. So thank you
Thank you.
so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was really fun. I really appreciate it. Thanks. Oh, before I stop, sorry, there's one more other really important piece of advice that I forgot to give. Um, Nicola here has been very modest. She has a book coming out herself in February 2026, and that to me is going to be the book on data governance that everybody must have. And I really mean that. She has every skill you would ever hope to have in the data governance world, and that book is going to be amazing.
Oh, thank you, Rob. And I didn't pay him to say that. So,
Not yet, not yet.
thank you, Rob. Bye.
Bye.
I really did enjoy recording that with Rob, and he wasn't joking when he talked about how long we'd been talking before we actually got around to hit record. And I'll be honest, we carried on chatting a bit afterwards. He's just one of those great people that I just love talking about data to, and he always has some great advice and insights to share, as I'm sure you will now agree. Now, I said during that Rob had got his publishers to very kindly offer a discount. So his book Practical Data Quality is published by Pact. So if you go to their website, which is www.pactpub.com, so that's PACKTPUB, pactpub.com. If you use the discount code DQ25, you will be able to get 25% discount off the e-version of Rob's book. So this discount is available for 15 days from the 2nd of September, which is the date this is being published. So please hurry along and buy his book. I really can't recommend it enough. And sadly, that brings us to the end of season 11. I can't believe how quickly it's gone. Honestly, when I start prepping for each season, I'm always wondering what on earth I'm going to cover this time for another 12 episodes. And by the time I get to the end of it, it's just past in a blur. I really do enjoy doing this podcast for you, and I really hope that you enjoy listening. So we're going to have a little bit of a break. As Rob so kindly mentioned, I've been really busy finishing my data governance book, and I need a little bit of work just to do some various things and proofreading for the publisher. But we will be back in October with season 12 of the podcast. So until then, good luck with your data governance initiative, and I hope you'll join me back here in October.